everyone, this is Lori Barnes. I am back with another video for you. This one is on the full moon in Scorpio. The full moon will culminate on Friday, May the 5th. And if you're in the United States, it'll be at 10:34 a.m. in the morning. If you are on the East Coast in the US, it'll be at 1:34 p.m. in the afternoon. And if you're in Rome, Italy, where I am, it'll be 7:34 p.m. in the evening. Now, this is also a lunar eclipse. At the new moon we had on April the 19th or 20th, depending on where you live, that was a solar eclipse. And eclipses always come in pairs. So we are having the second of the pair of eclipses. On occasion, we have 3 eclipses in a season, but this one will have just the 2. The difference between a solar eclipse and a lunar eclipse is that solar eclipses tend to be more external oriented, where maybe events or people come into the picture, there's some activity, and it's coming from external situations. Lunar eclipses tend to be more internalized, where your emotions and introspective type of work tends to be more active. With introspective thinking or an introspective focus, it can inspire you to create activity outside. So it certainly can encourage you to do something actively outside of you, but the origin of the activity in a lunar eclipse tends to be more internal, and the origin of activity in a solar eclipse tends to be more external. Now, that's a very general statement because it really depends on where it's happening in your chart to understand how it's going to affect you, which is usually the question, right? Like, how does that affect me in my chart? And without looking at each person's individual chart, it's hard to say. What we can do is give you the general meanings. We can also give you information as to how to look at your chart and learn more. You will want to look at where Taurus and Scorpio fall in your chart. So in everyone's chart, you look at the wheel, all 12 signs are represented. It doesn't matter what month you were born in or what year, a chart has all 12 signs. So somewhere in your birth chart, you'll have Taurus and Scorpio, which are the signs of this upcoming full moon. It's a Scorpio full moon because the moon is traveling through Scorpio. The sun is traveling through Taurus. This pair of signs, zodiac signs, are always opposite of each other. So when it's a Scorpio moon, it's always a Taurus sun, as they are across from each other. And where Scorpio and Taurus are in your personal chart will tell you the topics and people and events that are likely to be activated for the eclipses. One other thing to know about the eclipse season and eclipses in general are that not everyone is affected in the same way. If you have a planet or a point like your ascendant or your midheaven near or on the degree of the eclipse, then it's more than likely you're going to feel that activation. If you don't have any planets or points near the eclipse degree, or the opposite, across the way in Taurus or Scorpio, you're not as likely to experience an activation or have some sort of significant event come up. Not all astrologers agree on how long the energy of an eclipse is active. So some will say 6 months, some will say a year. I think that what you will find is that, and that many astrologers agree on, is that when that point, that degree of the eclipse is activated by another planet, that can give more information as to the timing for when an eclipse, the activity that comes from an eclipse becomes more clear, or, an event happens, or a realization becomes like an aha moment. So what you want to do is first look at your chart and see, do you have a planet or a point at the degree of the eclipse? The Scorpio full moon is at 14 degrees of Scorpio. And the solar eclipse that happened at the new moon on the 19th or 20th of April was at 29 degrees Aries. So those are the 2 degree points of the solar and the lunar eclipse. I'll say it again in case you want to write it down. The solar eclipse that happened April 19th or 20th at 29 degrees Aries, that's the first eclipse. And then the second one coming up at our full moon is at 14 degrees Scorpio. And so you want to look at 14 degrees Scorpio or Taurus for the lunar eclipse, and you want to look at 29 degrees Aries or Libra for the solar eclipse that happened at the new moon. And if you have something, so whether it's, Venus, Mars, Mercury, Sun, Moon, Saturn, Jupiter, if you have something around those degrees of those signs, then that part of your chart is activated. If you have nothing around those degrees, then it's less likely that you're going to feel some sort of activation or see some sort of activation. And when I say points, I mean your ascendant, your midheaven, your lunar nodes, so things like that aren't physical bodies, but are very important or sensitive parts of your chart. If you want to know where you can see the lunar eclipse, it'll be visible in Europe, Asia, Australia, Africa, the Pacific, Atlantic, and Indian Oceans, and Antarctica. And, there may be some visibility, not full visibility in all of those places. If you want to find out how visible the lunar eclipse will be where you live, I look at timeanddate.com. They have an eclipse section on their website, and they will let you know exactly what the visibility will look like where you live. You just have to put in where, your city, state, country, region, and it will let you know. So if you want to find out if you'll be able to see it, check that out. The Scorpio full moon is the half cycle. So it's halfway through a lunar cycle, the monthly lunar cycle. And the kickoff of this particular cycle was with the new moon that was in Aries. That new moon was at the very end of the sign. So that was an interesting new moon. And now we're at the halfway point. So the full moon is always the culmination. It's when the moon receives the most amount of light from the sun and we are illuminated. And the full moon can shine the light on something that was hidden or in the dark. It has to do with culminations, bringing something to fruition or to closure. It's like the blooming of a flower. When it's bloomed as far as it can bloom, it can't bloom anymore. That is a full moon. In the sign of Scorpio and with the sun in the sign of Taurus, it highlights this pair of signs. So the vibe or the frequency is the way that the sun and the moon are expressing their energies through these two signs. The sun is in Taurus. So the sun is expressing its vitality, its life-giving energy through the practical fixed earth sign of Taurus. It's about having your feet on the ground. It's about being practical in the approach to things. And fixed signs are all about maintaining the course, the status quo, kind of keeping things going the way that they're supposed to go. We appreciate the fixed signs for things like keeping things on track, having a steady pace, a steady rate. Taurus is especially known for its appreciation of the senses, of experiencing the sensual feeling of the taste of something, the smell of something, the way something feels, like a massage, to hear something beautiful. It's about the senses. It's about the appreciation of the beauty of sensual pleasure. And yes, sex can be part of that, but it's not limited to that. It's things that are pleasurable. The Taurus is one of the signs of Venus, and it's the side of Venus that's grounded and more attached to the earth and to the pleasurable things that we experience as in our earthly bodies. The moon is in Scorpio, and that's why it's a Scorpio full moon. In Scorpio, the moon is introspective. It is about looking deeply into something. The moon is in the Scorpio part of your chart. So looking at the Scorpio part of your chart will shine the light on what's likely to be coming up for you, what you may be spending more time thinking about during the full moon. And all of this is qualified, of course, by Mercury Retrograde, which is happening right now in the sign of Taurus. So we have Mercury Retrograde in the same sign as the sun at the full moon. So the sun and Mercury are in Taurus, and across the way is the moon in Scorpio, and then we have this full moon. So we have this introspective full moon, which is about kind of going deeply into yourself and having an honest conversation about like what is going on inside of you, what is coming up for you. What is it? A person? Is it a thing? Is it an emotion that is, it's just not letting go? It's like sending you a message, like, look deeper into why I am showing up for you. Mercury retrogrades are all about that. It's about reflecting backwards to go forward, having you look deeply into something in the sign of Scorpio. When the retrograde is in Taurus, it's like we have this axis of Scorpio Taurus, where Taurus wants to be practical, it wants to be steady, it wants to keep this pace. If you walk a line long enough, you start making a groove, and you keep going, and that groove keeps getting deeper and deeper and deeper, and eventually you end up in a rut. Because as much as we can appreciate the fixed signs keeping the steady pace, sometimes we need to break out and change our direction and change our patterns, especially after a long time of doing something the same way over and over and over. At some point, it gets old, it gets outdated, it gets worn out, and a new pattern needs to start, or, a new way of doing things needs to begin. And the Mercury retrograde in the sign of Taurus is the time to look back and figure out, like, where are my old outworn structures? Where am I really fixed on keeping things the same when maybe it's time for them to change? If you are honest and open and willing to go, look into it, look deeply into it, not just surface level. Scorpio's about going deep. You can start to see the clues that it's all there. It's letting you know what needs to change. It's when we're resistant to change, when we're holding on to things and trying to keep them the same, that's when we tend to run into problems. The best way to use this Mercury retrograde, and at this particular time of the full moon, is to work with it all together. What is this messaging saying? Well, on one hand, we have Taurus saying, I want to keep it practical. I want to keep it realistic. I want to stay grounded. I don't want to go off in woo-woo land. I want to kind of like be secure. I want to be sure that there's security for me. And Scorpio is about creating chaos so that things can get released and be brought back together. Scorpio is a great detective. Scorpio is excellent for evaluation, for analyzing things, for peeling back the layers, for penetrating and going very deep into whatever it is that is coming up for you at this time. Again, the house, where it is happening in your chart will give you more information. But if you don't have your chart, just kind of open up your mind and look around and pay attention to what things are calling to your attention right now. Where in life are you asked to take a pause and look deeply into the matter, take a deeper look into a matter or a few matters? It depends on, what's going on in your life. And your life better than anyone else. So the message is to be open to change, to be open to breaking up old outworn patterns. And this is a message from any Mercury retrograde. I do tend to use those words for the different Mercury retrogrades and then cater it to the sign. And then if I'm working with you personally, in a session, then of course we're going to look at your chart and where it's showing up and how that relates to the other parts in your chart. And that's going to give you a lot more information. We're talking about fixed signs now, right? We're not talking about Mercury retrograde in an air sign, which would be maybe a more social, more mental, or a water sign where it would be more emotional, or a fire sign where it would be more dynamic. We're talking about a Mercury retrograde in an earth sign, and at the full moon in Scorpio, the opposite sign of Scorpio is shining some light, right? Or receiving, the moon's technically receiving the light from the sun in Taurus. It's nice to have the full moon to help put the Mercury retrograde into context. And I recommend or hope for you that you take some time and can look deeply introspectively into yourself in a very honest and open way to where things might be stuck and where those old outworn patterns need to be broken up, because it is an earth sign It can be more material than some of the other Mercury retrogrades and other elements, like I was saying before. It can be letting go of things that are old, outworn, broken, that you have not wanted to replace because of, whatever reason, but now it's getting to the point where you have to replace it. It's just not functioning anymore. And it might relate to your security, because Taurus is very much about having that material security and comfort. It can be about, how are you getting your sensual needs met? Are you getting them met? Or are you disconnected from your body, from the joy of having your senses activated, having food that you enjoy eating, and having positive, healthy touch to your body, and hearing pleasant sounds? Even nature, I was outside the other day and there's so many birds out there singing, and it was like, I just want to sit here and be with the birds and listen to the beautiful music that they were making, and just enjoy, being in nature in that moment. And when was the last time you did that? So thinking about the different senses and thinking about your routines and the pace of life. Are you steady with your pace? Are you maybe too slow? Are you doing things too slowly where maybe you're not motivated? So why aren't you motivated? Like, look deeper into that. Are you doing things that you just don't want to do, and you're doing them maybe because you have to, work this job, or you have to, take care of this person or this thing. And of course, you have to take care of your responsibilities, and you want to take care of yourself. So if you're taking care of everything else and you're not taking care of yourself, the Mercury retrograde will hopefully be highlighting for you that you need to take care of that, maybe you need to slow down your pace. Maybe you're doing too much and there's just not enough time left for you. And if you find that your pace is too slow and you're bored, right? You have time on your hands and all you do is sit and watch Netflix, then maybe you want to cut back, not saying give it up totally. Like, we all like to watch Netflix and kind of get away and enjoy film. But if you're spending so much time doing that life is just kind of passing by, and your hopes and your dreams and your goals are just sitting on a piece of paper, or maybe not even, maybe you haven't even written them down and you're not getting to them, then maybe you need to pick up the pace. So this retrograde can be about pace. Now, when we go back to the full moon and the concept that the sun is shining the most amount of light onto the moon at a full moon, that's what it means. It's like the moon can't take any more light. It's full. It's like, what is the full moon lighting up for you? Where is the moon, or where is the sun lighting up hidden places that you don't normally see? Now that there's this, extra light of the full moon, what is it bringing to your attention? So pay attention to it, listen to it. And since it's a Scorpio full moon, use that sign and the element of water. So there is that emotional component to any full moon, but a water sign full moon makes it more of an emotional kind of experience. Of the three water signs, Scorpio is the still waters. So even though there may be a lot of emotional work going on the inside, if you look at a Scorpio, it's often like that stoic, like Scorpios are not dynamic, right? They're very contained. The Scorpio way of doing things is to penetrate deeply, research, evaluation, analysis. It can be reading a book. It can be writing in your journal. It can be hours of deep thought, and it can be very unobvious, if that's a word. It can be something that is private and silent and internal, because Scorpios they don't wear their emotions on their sleeve, right? They're hard to read, and they can be very secretive, and they can hold a ton of information. There's a great amount of memory usually with Scorpios. If I wanted to kind of break it down into a simple statement of the full moon, I'd say it's kind of like introspective honesty to help you ground and work with the Mercury retrograde. It's going to help you figure out where you could be stuck so you can break out of patterns and prepare you to start new routines once Mercury goes direct on May 14th. And if you want the dates, I'm just going to give them to you real quick. The Mercury retrograde started April 21st. It goes direct on May 14th. And there's that post shadow period that's going to go until June the 1st. If you're wanting to plan for when you can start new projects and buy things, if you're waiting to buy something outside of the Mercury retrograde, I would wait until June if you can. Anytime after even like May 20th, 21st, it'll be getting up to speed, but it's still covering old ground. So if you want to wait until Mercury gets to the point where it's covering new ground again, I would wait until June the 1st. So if you want to do something for the full moon, do something near water, in water. If you don't live near, a body of water, take a bath. If you're near a well, like a wishing well, a pond that has still water where you can see your reflection, those would be cool things to do under the full moon. I have a couple of inspirational quotes for you to wrap up our Scorpio full moon video today. The first one is from Nirmala Srivastava. She said, she's passed away now, wisdom can only come through honest introspection. Wisdom can only come through honest introspections. Very good quote for our upcoming Scorpio full moon. The next one is from Bryant McGill, who says, people who have had little self-reflection live life in a huge reality blind spot. And I love that because, the Mercury retrograde that's going on right now and the concept of looking backwards to move forward, I thought that fit nicely. And then the last one is from William Walker Atkinson, who says, study yourself, find your strong points and make them stronger. Study yourself carefully and you will see yourself as you really are. Oh, wonderful thing to do under this Mercury retrograde. Okay, well, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a productive Scorpio full moon and a productive Mercury retrograde. I'll see you next time. Bye.